and I would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Coos County. Hello, Oregon. Hello, America and beyond. And I want to thank all of you who are joining me right now or who will be joining me later. I've got a really good guest coming on. And before I start the show, I want this to be seared into your mind. I want this picture to be seared into your mind. I want you to take a look at that. I want you to read what it says, and I want you to look beyond the slogan there. It says, you take away logging, grazing, and maintenance, and you get fire bombs. That was said by Dr. Bob Zybach in 2018, and it's more true today than ever before, and it's a scary prediction. And that's look at that fire on the hill. We've all seen this. Anyone who lives in Oregon have seen this. Well, we're going to talk about this today, and we're going to talk about how there's some legislation and there's some state plans that are coming through. But before I get to Dr. Bob Zybach on, I am going to pull on Matt Holman from 3H Tree Service. Matt, how you doing?
Good, Rob. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad. We're getting ready to have Dr. Bob Zybach on. I'm going to pull him on. Dr. Bob, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you, Rob.
Yeah, I've got Matt Holman. He's one of my sponsors, and you'll really like it. He's with 3H Tree Service. He was on before the last time you were on here, and he's a logger. He used to be a logger. Well, he'd like to be logging right now, I tell you what.
Not in a tree for sure. Man, it's windy.
It's a little windy out there. How's the new bucket truck? Did you get to use that today at all?
No, absolutely not. No, it's pretty windy. I'm not going 80 feet in the air.
Damn.
That's the fresh scoop of the day. You heard it here first, Rob. Coos Forest Protection is going to go to fire season, level 1, Friday. So we'll be in level 1 fire season starting Friday. So everybody be careful out there in the woods. It's dry, it's hot, it's windy, so let's be smart while we're out in the woods.
Let me ask you, what does that exactly affect for people camping and what areas? Do you have a kind of a general idea, like county areas, state areas, and stuff like that?
Oh, I don't know. CFPA, they've got a pretty good map on their website. If you go to cfpa.com, they've got a pretty good map of their region and what's going on there. It shouldn't affect anything right now, but it's going to start the process. In the woods, they'll have to have fire trucks on the landing. Have to have fire tools in their vehicles. It's starting the process of preparation, and then it'll step up from here. It usually takes quite a bit to get it out of fire season now that it started. So it'll be October, maybe into September, October before fire season ends now.
I took 138 and I drove by Diamond Lake. I was going up to Bend, Oregon. And man, there is a lot of burnt forest up there, And it's like, I don't know what they're planning on doing with all that stuff, but do you think that's going to be repeating itself? Because you're out in the thicket a lot. So are you worried about that?
They released a bunch of fire information. I was just talking to a guy yesterday about it, and they're talking like Douglas County is going to get hit pretty hard this year. And, they haven't done a whole lot of preparation to save this stuff, like the Elliott. It's just a tinderbox waiting to go. and they need to log it, at least in it, but they won't. And so then we have these catastrophic fires. Most of that standing timber that you saw is government ground. If it's a private landowner and there's a fire that starts, they'll do everything they can to get it out right now, because they're going to lose their, that's their investment, is that timber. And they'll lose it all if they don't get on it and get that fire out. The government, they'll let it burn. There's federal dollars in a fire. So, hey, the bigger the fire, the more federal dollars we get. Let's let it burn.
And that's what it looks like up there. And that's sad. And you're right. It was mostly BLM land that I saw up there. And it's not a pretty sight. So, well, and you're not playing today because you're out and about at different places. So you're not playing.
This windstorm's got some trees down. My guys are over at the hospital now, taking a tree off the hospital. And so we've just been bouncing around from place to place, trying to get some loose ends tied up. And so it's not a standard day. We're not just at a job doing one thing today. It'd be hard to find us.
Understandable. That's all right. You'll do it next week, I'm sure. if you're not fighting fires.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And anyone who needs to get in contact with you, where can they reach you?
3H Tree Service, 3h-tree-service.com, I think, is our website. It's pretty new, but it's pretty interactive, and it's got a lot of good information on there. 3htreeservice@gmail.com is our email address, and the personal phone number to me is 541-294-1800.
Sweet. Anything you'd like to tell the listeners before you go?
Defensible space, it matters, and I know fire season's starting, but if you've got trees and shrubs and stuff next to your house, it's probably a good idea to get a little bit of a break, especially if you're out in the country. So we can do that. We're pretty efficient at it, and so it'll work out economically for sure. Pay us a little bit and save your house, because it's expensive to burn your house down.
Yeah, and it's really cool. You do an excellent job. And I had lunch with you today, and you were talking about how you actually had to go in and clean up after another people. That's how good of a job you're doing. They're paying you to clean up other people's messes now. So that's great.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Dr. Bob. Have a good show.
Will do. Thank you.
Bye.
And Dr. Bob, that's it's good to have. It was just, when he wanted to come on today, I thought that would just be a perfect opening for the show, because he's right out there in the middle of it. And as you heard, he understands the situation, obviously, much better than some of our legislators.
Well, he's been out in the Elliott, and he's watched the wind blow, and he sees how things change. Our legislators with the Elliott, I don't know what their problem is, but we've got two good ones, Boomer Wright and Court Boyce, that have the article in the World, and hopefully we'll have the other Republicans follow suit and realize this has been one expensive boondoggle, should have never happened, should have ended years ago, and it doesn't die. They just keep plugging it along, and those are not foresters, those are not loggers, those are not tree planters, those are environmental lawyers running the show, and they don't know what they're doing.
And they get a lot of money doing it. And if they lose, they get money doing it. That's the most insidious thing about this, is that we pay them whether they win or lose. And the law needs to be changed.
And what you were saying about the Forest Service or BLM, like I fished in Diamond Lake, I think the first time 1958 or 59, is beautiful country, just covered with trees, and all of these fires, they used to log, make money, and pay taxes in. Now they watch fires burn, and tax money that's been paid in is paid to these guys. So when we say they're looking to make more money, it's not by making more timber sales like 40 years ago. It's by watching a fire burn. And we're showing, my current article will even describe an instance where they've been setting major fires, keeping the fires bigger and larger, and using excuses like benign fire or ecological burning, They've been developing pods and box fire for human safety, and it's destroying billions of dollars worth of timber. It's costing tens of thousands of jobs. It's polluting the air, killing thousands of people, and most people are just oblivious to these problems.
In 1958, I took 138 to go to Diamond Lake. Was 138 there? What was the road like in 1958? I'm just curious.
I was 10 years old. My dad was drinking beer and driving. I'm not sure what the road number was. I remember being on the lake and catching fish, and we got a picture. We had 96 fish, mostly kokanee. That's before they wrote and owned it. So I remember that. It was bitterly cold. I remember setting a stump on fire, but I do not remember the road or the drive.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting. That may be a good thing. So this is something that they're working on now with the Elliott Forest, the Department of, now I'm forgetting the department that just
the Department of State Lands, DSL,
State Lands, right?
and the State Land Board is responsible. Yep.
But they just they had to work with the feds to do that HCP. Can you? And that's something I'm a little confused about, because there was two things that I kind of wanted to talk to you about, and that's Senate Bill 147, which was the one that Boomer Wright and Court Boyce were fighting in the legislature. In fact, that was supposed to come up for discussion today, and it's been held over till tomorrow. I don't know whether you knew that or not.
I know it's going to be Tuesday, so it'll be interesting to see what the discussion is, and it'll be interesting to see how the Republicans vote.
Yeah, and so the 147 declares it changes the name of the Elliott Forest into the Elliott Research Forest, and it also changes the department that's the head of the Elliott Forest. Isn't that correct?
Yep, it was the Department of Forestry up until a few years ago. Then they tried to give it to Oregon State, and Oregon State finally realized that then they're in way over their heads with the legislators and the carbon credit people. So they backed away. And then Department of State Lands thought, well, they could take the Oregon State plan, which is a nice student exercise, not a very good plan at all, and assume ownership of it. And all they'd need is taxpayers to continue paying, and they would do research. So it would be the Research Forest, but the research they got lined out is, I don't know how many people want to know if you can use LIDAR to discover murrelet nesting sites for a bird that lives in Alaska, but it's, I don't know what, there's a technical word for it. I don't know if the radio allows me to say bullshit or not, but this has been going on for a long, long time. It should have been stopped a long time ago, but the public is really unaware of what they're doing.
And that's the sad part, is that the public really has no idea. And part of the problem is that it's intentional, because you and I, we're constantly bombarded with it, and I'm still maneuvering what they're doing and how they're getting it from one department to another. I mean, when I first moved here, this was been held in trust for the Common School Fund. And at the time, I'm not sure if it was 2001. I don't know if the Elliott was still making money at that point in time, but at a certain point, it stopped making money because of the lawsuits and the lawyers and all that good stuff. And so the state didn't want to keep it anymore because, well, we're paying to manage it and we're not getting any money for the Common School Fund. And all of this is due to the unfair environmental regulations that have been put on actually the nation.
Yep. Yeah. In 2001, the HCPs started in the 1990s, believe it or not. It has been a real racket. It's cost us millions of dollars. And the whole point of an HCP, in 2001, they were still making some money. They were crippled pretty badly by the HCP that was temporary at that time. Then in 2012, the environmentalists filed another lawsuit. So the Elliott said, well, we need another HCP. This is 13 years ago. And an HCP is voluntary. It's not even required. It is not at all scientific, but they say it's science. It's a government regulation, 80-year regulation on a riparian area in a dynamic forest with a history of wildfire, Columbus Day storms, landslides, floods, insects, disease, and they're going to preserve private lands and state lands for 80 years to 78 feet beyond the upper reaches of a stage 4, whatever the hell. It's just all computer games. It's being regulated by the government. It's not science. And people just need to know what's going on. This has cost our schools hundreds of millions of dollars. It's cost Coos and Douglas County 400 jobs, millions of dollars of taxes that should have been paid in from that source as well as restaurants and gas stations and rental units and so on. So the whole thing is a boondoggle. I've written about that extensively for years and had zero impact.
I wouldn't say that. I actually wouldn't say that, Bob, because you're here. You know what I mean? There are more people probably listening to you today than ever before. And God forbid he takes you too early from us. I guarantee you we will be promoting those books. And that's something that I think everyone should definitely check out as some of your books. You just got a new book out, and I'm going to do let me see if I can get this on the screen here. Oh, let's see. Spotted Owls, Murrelets, Coho, and Their Critical Habitats, an anthology, Zybach Forestry Anthologies. And people can get this at Amazon. And this is your latest book talking about the kind of some of the pseudoscience out there, wouldn't you say?
It's totally about that. This is the fourth in a 4-part anthology of my writings going back to 1980, 45 years. This is the fourth and final one in the series I've been working on the last couple of years. And it's almost entirely about critical habitat and the pseudoscience that develops it. The lawyers that have profited by this, it's a racket. It's not science.
It's a racket. Yeah.
It's politics, and it's people taking a lot of political power and replacing a lot of blue-collar workers with people with 4-year studies degrees so they can monitor our land and make sure we're not logging it or managing it, and they can take population densities or something, who knows what. Play with computers is what they're doing.
Play with computers, and we've talked about that before. How and I go to meetings about the government taking this land or doing this project or something, and many times you'll talk to the people who are supposed to be the experts, and you ask them, "Well, when's the last time you've been out in the ocean?" "Oh, I don't have to go out in the ocean. I got my laptop right here." And I don't know. It's growing up on many different places, on a ranch and in rural parts of the world here. It's I'm blown away by how these people get their jobs. Other than they follow the same, they're willing to do the same, promote the same ideology that their bosses are. It seems like that's the only reason they're getting hired.
And appointed. Yep. It's all political. When people say the models tell us, the modeling is, science tells us, modeling is not science. It's a technology. It's great for doing engineering. Modeling is critical. It's also useful for science, but when they use models to predict the future, that's exactly the same as medieval monks that used to talk to God in Latin. So the rest of us didn't know what was going on. These guys speak in acronyms. They didn't speak in Latin. They used metrics. We got 44 hectares with a density factor of 0.29, and that tells us something or other. So that means they're really, really smart. And they are, because they're getting taxpayers to pay them 6-figure salaries to come up with that crap. They're putting thousands of us out of work and burning up our forests, and they're getting away with it decade after decade. This has been going on for 35 years.
Well, it's even worse than that. That's bad enough, but it's worse than that. But they're getting accolades for doing exactly what you said, because then they're promoting themselves as the saviors. We're the ones who are actually saving the forest, when the guy we just had on, Matt Holman, he's done more to save forest than anyone in any state office anywhere. And so that's the kind of stuff that just annoys the hell out of me. So why do they make these HCPs 80 years long. I mean, that's we're talking great grandchildren stuff here, man.
It'll never happen. I mean, that's just stupid. Nobody's going to let that happen. A landslide, a windstorm, a person with a brain. It's government overreach. They're shooting. They're calling it science, which is degrading science. But yeah, the whole HCP thing's been going on for 30 years, and the whole concept behind it, it's voluntary. They don't need to do it on the Elliott. We don't need to do it on private land, but they give you some kind of taxpayer benefit. The taxpayers give you some money to do it, and then you have to have a taxpayer-funded bureaucrat come in and check it every 5 years. Then you have to sign up for then when it burns or blows over, you have to pay the money back. The whole thing is just it's ridiculous. Well, I'm conflating carbon credits with the HCPs now, but they are hand in glove. An HCP will get you a carbon credit if you do it right, which means lots of bureaucrats, lots of government regulations, and ever increasing wildfire risk.
Well, that's what I thought. 147, and it's 147B now. I want to go to the letter that let's see that. Let me remove this and put this up there. This is the letter that this is basically the article that was in the newspaper. They commented from this. And this is the letter against 147A. And I don't know the difference between A and B because it's a long bill and I didn't get to research it to figure out what they changed in it. So I don't think it got any better, to be honest with you. But it is up for vote tomorrow. And Boomer Wright and Court Boyce, to their credit, thank goodness, they're saying that they're voting against this.
And they're trying to encourage others. If let's see, I was going to ask you if you could read Boomer's quote because it's right on target.
I'll do both of them here. It says, when you don't manage your forest property, you get wildfires, said Representative Boyce. Due to the State Board of Forestry's management of forests, like the Elliott State Forest, Coos County has gone nearly 40 years without any major wildfires. Now, with the transfer between agencies and the designation of the Elliott State Forest as a research forest, responsible forest management is under threat, putting thousands of acres and Oregonians on the South Coast at risk, not to mention the tremendous loss to our common school fund, which he is completely correct in.
Yep.
And then Boomer Wright says, well, I'm having a hard time. Okay, it says, it is time for the Elliott Forest mismanagement to stop and give these trust lands back to our children. Boy, he's correct. This process has been one mistake after another and has shown government bureaucracy at its best, said Representative Wright. The environmental, nonprofit, for-profit organizations have supported and pushed their agenda of forest mismanagement of the Elliott over our children's education, safety from wildfires, and costly rural communities, good paying jobs that put food on their tables, clothes on their backs, and roofs over their heads. Oregon State University seems to be the only sane member of this idiocy and said no to the project feasibility, and so should the legislature, talking about SB 147.
Yeah. Both of those statements are right on target. I'm really happy that the World printed them. And it'll be interesting to see how the legislature responds because they just keep. We've got a series of environmental lawyers. I learned recently Kate Brown was an environmental lawyer, for God's sakes. But the people that have been talking to COTEC, the people that have been talking to READ, which are 2/3 of the state land board, are environmental lawyers, and they're doing this behind the scenes. They're trying to get carbon credits. They finally got an HCP. The whole bizarre thing with an HCP is if you put one in place and it's okayed by the federal government, then you get a reprieve from being sued by the environmentalists. So it means the environmental lobby, environmental lawyers that have been put into place by the lawyers in our legislatures, really allowing them to do this, permitting them to do this, giving the tools to do this. Those people are working to the disadvantage of the rest of us. So those people are setting our rules, our regulations. We know who they are. We had a forester that was heading the Department of State Lands, Jim Paul. He was really good. When they started this DSL thing 7 or 8 years ago, he went over to a different department. And so Governor Brown, who an environmental lawyer with an environmental lawyer advisor, appointed a Democrat person. I'm not thinking of her name right now, Vicki Walker. Total, I don't want to say she's a ditz, but she's unqualified. And she's been running the department for 7 or 8 years. She's just now getting ready to retire. And her whole push has been to hire other environmental lawyers, Bob Salinger and those folks, to put together a anti-logging forest, they call it preservation. And the previous speaker said it's a firebomb. It's waiting for an east wind. That's its history. It's had very dynamic forest. There's no way that biologically that this HCP will last. There's no way that the research they're doing has any particular value to Oregon landowners. The whole thing is, it's an eye opener, and that you can see how the government operates when they're in power. And so we've got a lot of, they happen to be Democrats that are engineering this, and they're killing off our rural communities and burning up our forests and not allowing us to salvage them even. So it looks like a commie plot, but it's Democrat politics.
Well, and I've got the totals here of the vote in the Senate. And as you can see, Gerard, he voted against that. Lithicum voted against it, of course. Robinson voted against it. Thatcher voted against it. McLean voted against it. But you did have a couple of senators who not only voted for it, but they promoted it, and they were promoting this HCP. Now, I want to play you a video from David Brock Smith talking about Miss Walker and the HCP from just last week. And this was just from last week.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I stand to give courtesies to Department of State Lands Director Vicki Walker. Today, we just got in all our emails, hopefully you did as well, the announcement that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has approved the Habitat Conservation Plan and the Endangered Species Act permit for the next 80 years for the Elliott State Forest. Now, that would not have happened without this body, many of the members on the floor, and the work and leadership of Director Walker. We've had a Elliott State Forest that has seen no harvest in quite a long time. It's been costing the Common School Fund nearly $3 million a biennium to manage a forest that we don't see any return off of. Many of my colleagues and constituents don't understand the push that I've worked with the director on getting this done, but now we're going to have between 15 and 22 million board feet of timber coming off that forest, local jobs in that forest, local logs going to local mills from that forest, and the resources generated will assist the research forest that has also been established within the legislation. And again, the courtesy goes to Director Walker for her years of public service, not only in this body, but as leading and at the helm of the Department of State Lands for so many years that she's been there after coming back from USDA Rural Development. She is retiring next month, and she will be dearly missed, and I've sincerely appreciated the opportunity to work with her and these other issues that are so critical to my district and that of the state of Oregon. Thank you.
And thank you, Senator, for that wonderful courtesy extended to former State Senator Vicki Walker, distinguished alumni of this floor. I have a feeling post-retirement she'll have a warm welcome back to the floor from Senator Brock Smith. Courtesies extended to her this morning.
Yeah.
Well, that's disappointing. Senator Brock Smith, I just lost a lot of respect for him. He's been good on a lot of things, but thinking that 15 to 20 million board feet will happen after 20 years, Vicki Walker inherited this mess. It was before her. She wasn't responsible for getting it done.
Right.
But for him to say that 15 or 20 million board feet is this big bonus thing, after all the millions that have been spent on putting an HCP together over the decades, that is chump change. That won't support a sawmill. You need 50 million feet. They were doing 50 million feet in 1989. The Elliott grows 60 or 70 or 80 million feet a year. That is fuel that will burn if it's not harvested or thinned or lost to windstorm or something first. So for him to be congratulating her and acting like the HCP is a big deal is really disappointing. Just look at the cost of it over all these years. Look at how little Vicki Walker has done to put money into the Common School Fund and how much she has spent to create these HCPs and this pseudo research forest. It's disappointing.
Yeah, and that's once again, and we're getting no return on something that's a natural resource that should be providing for everyone. And and the thing is that Coos and Douglas counties, we should be really setting on a gold mine. We really literally have the goose that lays the golden egg. And here we are being stifled by a legal system that just doesn't give a damn about rural communities. They're more concerned about a bird that may or may not even be indigenous or may not be endangered. You know what I mean? So
I don't think they're so concerned with that. I used to think that they used to be optimistic about things and actually concerned about the coho or the spotted owl, but no, they're politicians and they're interested in power, and they've been opposed to the rural communities for 30 years. Now, you came in 2001, but prior to 1990, we had nice schools, nice parks, new roads. We did not have wildfires. We had thousands of jobs for kids that didn't even graduate from high school, but they had a good work ethic. They had experience, and we were getting a lot accomplished. There would be ways to argue against some of the methods, some of the clear cutting methods or designs, but instead of refining it, they threw the baby out with the bathwater. They got this Endangered Species Act. They got a bunch of lawyers to say, oh, here's a NEPA violation. Here's an Equal Access to Justice Act, which says the taxpayers will pay us for stopping the logging. And they've been doing that for 30 years. It's more than 30 years. And what you walked into and what you've seen has been getting gradually worse. As you said, you went to Diamond Lake, everything's all burnt up. If you'd gone there in 2001, it would have all been beautiful. But that was part of the accelerating problem we've had with gross mismanagement, as Boomer Wright said, gross mismanagement of our resources. And it's caused all kinds of damage to all of our rural communities in Western Oregon and to our forests and killed millions of wildlife. So to see Brock Smith talk glowingly about a government appointee that's been basically marching in place, cashing checks, and extolling an HCP, which has cost our schools hundreds of millions of dollars in his own community, hundreds of jobs. It means he's either not aware of the problem or he's on their side.
Yeah, and that's what I'm afraid of, and it's and because it's politics, there's so much money involved. That's the corrupting factor, and then you got the damn lawyers. The damn lawyers are the worst ones because we got a system, and I go back to, in a lot of countries, if you lose, you have to pay for the other person's attorney.
Yep.
And in America, the environmentalists, because the laws are set up, and we talked about this earlier, if they sue, they actually still get paid no matter what. And they need tort reform. And I'm really hoping under the Trump administration, they would start looking at this type of tort reform. And maybe they would start looking at these HCPs that are being put on. Who does the HCPs? Is that the Department of Interior, or how many different departments do that?
It's basically two, the Fish and Wildlife Service and then NOAA, because it's sea-run fish. But there is some really good news that came out of the Supreme Court that you might be aware of just a couple days ago, and that is NEPA. They are saying that a lot of the NEPA litigation, which is what we're talking about, is being negated by current Supreme Court ruling that says they cannot go and make people speculate about these odd little environmental arguments that they develop, as far as saying, well, they haven't looked at the impact on murrelet breeding habits, or they haven't looked at the impact on coho spawning locations in their what do they call them, an ESA? Or no, they got an acronym for it, but the acronym is they come up with a 3,500-page report. The environmental lawyers come in, they find a few I's or T's that aren't crossed or dotted, or come up with an argument that some animal or another wasn't paid attention to. They file suit, it stops the logging, it stops the harvesting, and then the taxpayers pay them. And sometimes they pay them damages in addition to their legal fees. So, and it's hardly ever reported. So we don't know how many millions that we're paying to these Environmental Access to Justice Act lawyers and strategies. Well,
and I just happened to was able to click it up, and this is on SCOTUS blog. They're pretty good at analyzing Supreme Court decisions, and it says Supreme Court limits scope of environmental review, and it said the Supreme Court on Thursday, oh, this is impressive, unanimously ruled to limit the scope of the environmental review required under the seminal 1970s Environmental Protection Law. The move brought a proposed 88-mile railroad line that would transport crude oil from oil fields to the northern Utah to refineries on the Gulf Coast one step closer to production. Environmental groups and a neighboring Colorado County had told the justices that the federal agency that approved the project had failed to consider its broader environmental costs. And so in the ruling for the railroad, the justices sketched out a relatively narrow role for courts reviewing future decisions under the National Environmental Policy Act, the landmark environmental law at the center of the case. And I don't want to go any further into that because, what you said, it looks like they are limiting some of the things that the NEPA thing will do.
And the HCP is based entirely on NEPA speculation. So this could blow a hole in HCP. Hopefully it will. I mean, this just happened. HCP just happened. They've got the legal thing just happening. So it's all kind of colliding. And I think hopefully that the federal government's opposition to this kind of politics and use of our courts is being nullified, or at least sharply neutered, hopefully.
Hopefully, I'll go through that article because that was just out Thursday and I completely missed it. I've been traveling since Thursday. Just reading that and looking at the case that they were talking about, you might be able, not mean you, but people might be able, the county itself, the county commissioners from both Douglas and Coos could maybe possibly sue, not on just the environmental impacts that they're missing, but the length of 80 years seems to me also something that's just absolutely ridiculous. And like you said, there's no way 40 years from now. I won't be here to look back, but if I could.
My prediction is 4 years or 14 years from now. It's absolutely stupid. Why people would say we're going to tie up state land for 80 years and we're going to use science to do it, and here's how we're going to measure it, here's who the people are going to operate it, and we've got it all on our computers, this is all good, and we'll have people in the field doing field checks and so on. The whole thing is just a a castle built on sand. And the fact that they've been able to get this HCP through after 20 years and get backing from people like Brock Smith, my goodness, that's pathetic. Really. I know that he's got good friends, and I've had good conversations with him, and there's a lot of supporters for him, but that right there, that's a game changer.
That is a game changer. And I the only reason that I got that video was I was watching a gun bill that was going to be debated, and they had at the beginning they have comments or whatever where they talk about other people before they start the legislative session, and he happened to be talking about Miss Walker, and I just knew as soon as I heard her name, I've got to get this clip for you. So I was glad that I'm sad that he had to do it, but I was glad that I was able to show that to you, because it's just nobody has seen that. And I think people need to know when we're talking to someone, because he's got a lot of constituents here, which way they went on this bill, so they can say, look, we need to have this changed. And let's, and I want to stand in his shoes for a moment. There may be a reason that he had to do this, because he actually believes there is no other choice because of the legislative barriers that have been put up. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Does he believe that Vicki Walker is a really sharp individual that steered this through herself? Does he also believe that? Because that's nonsense.
I'll plead the fifth.
But the fact that he would promote it the way he did is really disappointing. It's like, oh, we can do 12 to 15 million feet a year. It's like, oh, we've got a new freeway and we can drive 11 miles an hour on it. It's like,
that's exactly.
It's a government regulation. It's totally artificial, and it can't last 80 years because nature won't let it last 80 years. Things grow old and die. And the Elliott, we've had not only major fires that I've documented for centuries, but we had the Columbus Day storm that blew down 100 billion feet. Well, or 100 million feet. How are you going to do 12 or 15 million feet a year after that? The fires have burnt hundreds of millions of feet within hours. We had the 1996 floods. We had over 100 landslides on the north end of the Elliott. There's probably several thousand overall. So how are we going to salvage that next time or clean things up? So the whole thing, the government thinks that they can tell us what to do, and they get away with it. They think they can tell nature what to do, and they're going to lose.
When I was driving 138 to Bend, I had to get off. I think it was 97 heading north. And on 97 heading north, the forest kind of changed as you're going north, and it got a little bit thinner. But there was still a lot of burned trees still standing. And I was wondering, because they had a lot of logs all over the place. Are they going to go in and take those logs out? What happens to those logs that are all laying all over the ground out there? Is that just rot now?
A lot of it. They don't have the sawmills. They shut down the sawmills. They clear out the roadways. I heard just yesterday that we went in and videotaped and took photos, and I wrote an article about one of the burns that went over to 97 almost. And it was the Cedar Creek fire between Oak Ridge and Sisters. And that one there had a lot of logs that they had pulled in to open the roads, and they've been there for 1 or 2 years because there's no sawmill that can handle them. So it's a road clearing project. They deck up the logs, and then it's totally wasted. So guess who's paying to have them remove the logs? It's not a sawmill, you and me.
Yeah.
The whole thing is mystifying in one way, that it could go on for 30 years. It should have ended 20 years ago, but it's looking like now there might be some daylight to start turning the corner finally.
It makes, because you're talking about the same government that forces many of us to drink out of paper straws. And here we have this going on. So the trees that are still standing, but they're burnt, the branches have been burnt off them and stuff. To me, that looks like that's just inviting disease and pestilence. Is that true? Is that going to happen now that you got all those trees up there? Is he going to cause that kind of a problem?
Yep. Yeah. What happens on the east side there, where you got lodgepole and that, you get pine beetles within a year. You can hear them. There's so many of them that'll come into a burnt area. If it's not salvaged, the bugs will get them. And then what'll happen, like the Charleston burn from 1997, that was part of the Cedar Creek reburn. They let it burn in the wilderness area, it burnt through the Charleston burn. And you look at that now, and it's just total devastation. The topsoil has been burnt off. All of the trees have been burned off. It's when you go from a green tree in a crown fire, the tree is full of water. After the crown fire goes through and kills the tree, it becomes air-dried firewood, and it's full of pitch. They're more flammable after a fire than before. So there's more fuel after a fire than before. And the fact that we're not salvaging those on Forest Service land is one of the main reasons we keep having more fires, and they're worse than the previous ones. They just build off the fuel they created from the earlier fires.
Yeah, we're just compounding the problem. We're pretty damn good at that.
Yep.
So, boy, where was I going with that? So I was thinking about so they're going to leave those trees there, and they're going to cause, like I said, infestation and all that other stuff. But also, if they let the fires continue to burn, and they get hotter fires because they let them burn longer, like you said, that destroys the ground itself. A lot of people don't understand it. You think, oh, well, how can you hurt dirt with fire? But in actuality, it destroys the ability of the soil, from what I understand, to even grow, because it goes underground and burns the roots of the trees in some situations.
Soil's organic, so it becomes a fuel if it's hot enough. And then you get these fire whirls, the winds that are created by the fires that blow the topsoil right off the surface. So you get areas in Southwest Oregon that were islands when there was dinosaurs, and they're rock face now, or the Elliott rock face now, because it's either so steep it falls off, or the topsoil is removed in fires, and so you lose the topsoil. You lose the ability of the land to grow trees.
And then what happens?
You get brush, and that's what they got down in California. If you lose the tree cover and you lose the soil, you can go to the Kalmiopsis wilderness now. It's burned 4 times, and it's a brush field, which is even more volatile. Or you can go down to LA last January, and they had brush fields burn up in 1962. They made beautiful films of it. They showed how dangerous the brush was, and they let it grow up again and had a very similar fire. But the Bel Air fire of 1967 maybe, or 62, they put out a video. The LA Fire Department put out a video. It's excellent. It shows you exactly what they needed to do to keep the 2025 LA fire from burning that they didn't do. They had problems with water hydrants. They had trouble with the wooden buildings, and they had problems with brush. So if you don't learn the lessons of history, you're doomed to repeat them. And those of us that learn the lessons are doomed to stand by and watch helplessly.
And I live in a town that was destroyed twice by fire. So it's not like, and just last century twice, so we're due. But this is something it's actually a I couldn't call it national, maybe, I don't know, maybe not quite national security, but it's state. The state has a responsibility to make sure that future generations can live off these forests, live off these lands. And if they're going to let them burn, especially the federal government, let them burn, the soil gets damaged to the point where all you're going to be able to grow on there is sagebrush. We are really causing a calamity, a catastrophe for future generations that is not even conceivable by most of the population today, because they're not realizing that these fires have that type of a reach or an extent after the fire has been put out.
Well, we've done better than that. We've created a calamity for the current generation. If you look at the back of my books, and I do want to plug my Elliott book before we're through, but they're written for my great grandkids. This is not the environment that I grew up in, or my parents grew up in, or even my children grew up in. This is all of these burnt trees, all of this unemployment, all of this air pollution, all of the dead wildlife. That's all new stuff. Me and others predicted against it in the early 90s. If we follow the Clinton plan, if we follow the Northwest Forest plan, it's going to be leaving a real mess for our children and our grandchildren. We followed the plan, and there's a real mess out there. So hopefully with the current administration, we can start to change that. We've got to get rid of all the fuel, the dead trees. They're not critical habitat. They are gross, ugly fire bombs. And get back to work and have people pay taxes instead of living on a sidewalk or collecting taxes to take care of people living on a sidewalk.
Yeah, well, and it's not, people go, well, yeah, but those guys aren't going to be logging trees. No, they're not, but they're going to be able to work in the restaurants, the stores, all the auto shops, all the other things that has to accompany the loggers, and all of that. We sell coffee. We have, we're getting ready to open another coffee shop. We need loggers in those coffee shops every morning, buying that coffee, buying, from other sales places and, other retail outlets. It's if we don't have that rebounding economy, it just kills us in rural Oregon. And many of us believe that's part and parcel of the intention. I mean, once again, the environmentalists will get all the accolades, and rural people are demonized when we're the ones who love the land. We're the ones who are taking care of the land. And in fact, if it wasn't for us in the rural part of the world, the nation wouldn't even be fed, man. It's like, wow, you people are just really crapping on the people who are feeding you, talk about biting the hand you feed. This is literally what they're doing.
Well, we're talking about the houseless now, or homeless. But after World War II, we had a lot of poor people. People that picked our crops at that time were poor white families. We spent the next 20 or 30 years logging and building homes. So we built homes all across the United States for American families. We gave people jobs, and we got a lot done. We did not have wildfires. We did not have people sleeping on the streets. We had options of working or not working, and that changed. And so it's right now, for 40 years, we have not had local workers or school kids planting trees. We've had the U.S. government hiring illegal aliens to come in and do that work for us. So they're not even contributing to the local economy. And when I point that out to Forest Service people and say, the money's getting sent to Mexico, it's not staying in Coos County. These people are living in slave camps. There's people taking advantage of them. They call me a racist, but it's like Mexico is a country. Right. And I think that those people that know how to do the work deserve a path to citizenship. They need year-round jobs. They need a house to live in. To slave camps and government and Weyerhaeuser paying people to take advantage of other people, to me, that's got to be another thing that ends. If we're going to turn this around, we're stuck with the fact that most of the skilled workers right now, in my former profession, reforestation, I'd say 90% of them are Mexican. So we need to assimilate those people, not continue taking advantage of them. And that's been something we need to do if we're going to fix this mess.
Living in the farms in Texas or near farms in Texas and the rural area, New Mexico, the Southwest, most of the crops out there are picked by seasonal Hispanics, Mexicans who come across the border, work for a certain period of time, and they're treated like crap. They work in very lousy conditions. They're paid nothing. And if you say, oh, we don't want illegal aliens, that's not what we're talking about. You know what I mean? We want people to pick our farms, our food on our farms and on our ranches and fight those forest fires. But like you said, we need to assimilate them, not treat them like a second-class citizen. And that's what's happening here, because it's money. Once again, they're getting they're getting paid nothing to do work that, if it was done by an American, no matter what color American, just because they are American, would cost quite a bit more for them to do.
And the odd thing is it's actually cheaper to have people that know what they're doing do the work. When my crews were doing the work, we were able to work at about 60 to 70% of the costs of the U.S. government, and we were doing way better work for 60, because we were working for private industry. We had not a profit motive, but a good work ethic. We worked year round. I had guys that worked for me that bought homes while they were working for me. And then the government started putting in, the U.S. government, short-term, low-bid contracts. And that attracted the farm workers. And then they even shifted the quality of the tools we could use. A good reforestation worker will use a hodad to plant trees. Now the government contracts, and when I say now, I mean 30 years ago, said shovels are required. Well, farm workers are really good with shovels, but shovels are not the best tool to plant a tree. But a hodag takes a while to learn. It takes strength. As a little guy has trouble using the tool, a littler than me. And so they single-handedly turned the industry over to illegal alien part-time farm workers 40 years ago. And then when things got better, those of us that had been in the industry in the early 80s got starved out. You might remember we had a real housing depression. We had real depression in the forests. And then organizations like Weyerhaeuser and Georgia Pacific that said they would never hire the Mexican crews. Last year we had Mount St. Helens reforestation. My mom's from Cougar, Washington on Mount St. Helens. And so you think that's local. They had a Weyerhaeuser guy out there saying, we're giving this Oregon Department of Forestry award to Mount St. Helens reforestation over the last 4 years. They've just done a wonderful job reforesting our burnt area here. And so that's a white guy on a landing. And then he turned it over to the slave driver, the owner, who was getting the award. And he was saying, oh yeah, my men come up from Mexico every year and his family. So it's 100% Mexican planting. And then the Weyerhaeuser guy says, these guys shoveled in so many trees. I thought, wait a minute, Mount St. Helens reforestation is hiring illegal aliens to use shovels on Weyerhaeuser ground, and our state is giving them an award. It's the people, it's the taxpayers, it's the Weyerhaeusers, it's the slave drivers that are taking advantage of these people. And if we want them to self-deport, all we have to do is get rid of the problem, which is the people that are giving them driver's license, food stamps, and under-the-counter payments to stay here. And again, it's not the people that I've got lots of Mexican friends. One of my best friends ever was a Yaqui Indian and worked for me for 10 or 15 years, and neighbors for a lot of years. He's not with us any longer, but it's not them. It's the people that are enticing them to come here, government people, right, and industry people, the people that are paying them. And if we made that illegal, they would self-deport, or they would start making good wages and become full-time citizens.
Either way, it would be better results for everyone all the way around. And like you said, of course, if you try that, oh, you're racist, and it's just absolutely silly. And once again, this is the situation. Government comes in, they cripple the people, then they hand you a crutch and then say, well, are you going to say apologize now? Are you going to say thank you? You know what I mean? It's, you know what I mean? They act like they're the ones who, you crippled us and you're handing us a crutch. You know, it's kind of like, you know, the Mendez brothers who killed their parents, you know, now they're crying because they're orphans, you know. It's like, well, wait a minute, pal. Stop shooting mom and dad and you won't have this problem. But that's how government works, and they have to do that, because if they didn't get the accolades, then people might realize what's going on behind the curtain is much worse than what we thought. And yeah, I in politics, it's so hard because everything is doublespeak, and you know it. And I'm sure for a man like you, it must be absolutely frustrating, because you want to deal with, you know, the what's real, what's solid, what's a fact, and that's not politics.
No, it's sad to see what's happened. Frustrating is kind of part of the problem, but 30 years, 35 years, it's hard to believe that people could be falling for this even now. And we've got people in Congress that are saying, oh, we've got to have the part-time workers up here, the crop workers up here. Yeah, we need them, but we need to pay them fairly, and we need to give them year-round work because there's year-round work to do. And so when people are saying they don't know what's going on, we're the ones paying for it. Taxpayers are subsidizing and funding all of this stuff. When we give somebody like Vicki Walker accolades for being a political appointee and working part-time and being incapable of doing the job, just to mark her in place, and we're giving them hundreds of thousands of dollars. She's probably making a six-figure salary for being a Democrat. It's to me, it's.
Well, she was just in the Biden administration for I think it was the USDA, and I don't know what she was doing up there, because she was a representative at one time, and then went up to work with the Biden administration, but I have read some of her quotes, and I nearly had some of her quotes because, wow, you read them and you go, this lady's not living on the same planet I'm living on, and so yeah, but I couldn't find any of the good ones, but I have remembered her making some doozies out there, and that's the people in politics that we're playing with. And I wonder how many times she's walked the Elliott Forest. You know what I mean? That's the thing. How many of these people have been out there?
Well, she went to Reedsport for high school, so I'm guessing she might have gone to the Elliott there. But in the 4 or 5 years that OSU collected millions of dollars, we offered to take their fire expert who wrote a tree ring study, that good student project, but he didn't even read any of my literature or talk to Jerry Phillips or the actual experts on it. But they said they had one tour out there in 5 years. They didn't have people out there. They didn't have people working there. No boots on the ground. It was all meetings and computer printouts and politics. They were in Salem way more often than they were in the Elliott. And that's pretty obvious. If you actually read the literature, I did write a peer review of their management plan, and the management plan should be an embarrassment.
I think I posted that. Yeah, I think I did post that because I thought it was such a good rebuke to some of the nonsense that they were pushing. You wanted to promote your book again.
Not this one. The first one in this series, this is a 4-part series, was the Elliott. There it is. It's the one in the middle there. It's got there. We got Wayne Gazy, Jerry Phillips, and David Gould all on the cover. This is in 2017. We started working on the Elliott with this Southwest Oregon Community College. All 3 of those men have since died, but Jerry wrote the book on the Elliott in 1996. It is the masterpiece. It's the Bible of the Elliott. I had to tell Oregon State about it. I'm sure they never read it. Then my book was just written last year, and that covers the history of the Elliott. It assimilates Jerry's writing, and then goes right up to 2024. So it talks about the HCP. It names names. It's got a couple Vicki Walker quotes in there to kind of demonstrate her capability.
Oh, see there, that's great minds think alike. See, you even got some quotes from her. I knew there were some doozies out there. Beautiful.
We've got videotapes on it, and I've listened to her give 4 or 5 different presentations, and and to listen to David Brock Smith, it sounds like she's Mother Teresa or somebody. She's a political appointee that rarely showed up to work, that doesn't know the first thing about forestry, that's got good friends in the Democrat Party, and has just allowed the Elliott to become a piece of crap. Just a political boondoggle that should not have progressed this far.
No, and it's sad because we're playing with human lives here. We're playing, and not even just human. These are people who claim, because they would step over a human to save a Marlboro Merlet. This is the type of people they are. I don't know if they got their shoes dirty, they might not, but you know what I mean. And here, these are the same people who don't realize when those fires burn. I've seen the animals who come running out of the fires on fire, who die as they're running from the fire. And I mean, it's the screams from these animals. I wish I could drag Miss Walker out there when this crap is going on, because it is just horrifying to watch this happen. And, if maybe you don't care about your fellow man, but we're talking about the duckies and the bunnies. I mean, this is what you people are supposed to care about. And they don't give a shit, Bob.
I've put pictures in some of my articles showing dead deer, dead animals, millions of wildlife get killed in these fires. The other thing is they say we're creating habitat. About 40,000 acres of the Elliott was logged, and then it was planted into industrial specifications. That means instead of restoring the landscape to how it had been with the combination of, say, huckleberries and wildflowers and bunch grasses and Douglas fir and cedar and so on, it's straight linear rows of typically Douglas fir.
Yeah.
Now I've written about this quite a bit too, but that is the antithesis of biodiversity. You go underneath a plantation and there are no flowers, there's no songbirds, there's no butterflies, there's no deer, there's no browse, there's no food, but there is a contiguous crown of fuel, highly flammable, full of pitch. And so the plantations are a fire hazard. They are the antithesis of biodiversity. And yet these guys at the college and Salem say, oh yeah, we're going to let it develop into critical native habitat. That's like, oh, wow, that can't happen. We're dealing with biology here, guys. Right, what you're saying is maybe good on your computer, but it doesn't happen in real life. Those are the people that don't get dirt on their boots.
Absolutely.
But they're the ones they're paying for.
Well, and you can tell the difference when you walk into a forest, ones that have been platted out, you know what I mean? And ones that grew naturally and stuff. And you could see that as I was driving on my trip, where you would go from one forest stand where you could tell this was just a natural forest that occurred. Then you would hit another stand, and like you said, it was trees in a row. Trees don't grow naturally in a row like that. And yeah, and I don't know, they just look really tight in there. They don't look comfortable.
And well, the thing is, they shade out all the flowers and the huckleberries and the ground plants. Mushrooms can grow okay in them at certain times of year, but they take away the biodiversity. So you don't have large mammals in there because there's nothing to eat. And the same thing with the butterflies and songbirds. There's no nectar, there's no wildflowers. And so these people are arguing for biodiversity and native vegetation and critical habitat. And then they're like using an eraser to erase it. And then they tell you to trust them because their computer says in 80 years, it'll be marbled murals everywhere you look or something, something that nobody wants, but it's like something that they've sold us. One point I'd like to make before I forget, the 1897 Organic Act, we're talking about Trump, and the 1897 Organic Act is the one that when we formed our forest reserves in 1897, we said the local communities will use these forests for the old and dead and dying trees. They will make local products. For the younger forests, they will encourage them to grow. They will replace them with younger trees and manage them. That law has never been changed. It's set up for local communities, active forest management. And so in 1905, when the Forest Service formed, they adopted the Organic Act. They had to, but they took the forest reserves from the Department of Interior, like BLM, and they put it Department of Agriculture under Pinchot. He wrote the use book, and that's 1905, and it's all for the management of local people. And then in 1910, we had a major wildfire that burnt through 3 million acres, killed 85 people, northern Idaho, and so on. And that freaked everybody out. So the Forest Service changed its policy to protect us from fire, to protect us from forest fire. And by the 1930s, we had over 8,000 lookout towers. 1940s, we had smoke jumpers. We had aerial surveillance because of World War II veterans. And by early 50s, we had taken care of the wildfire problem completely. We had lots of roads in. We had good fire control system. We were following the Organic Act. And then we put in the Sustained Yield and Management Act. It was based on the 1897 Organic Act, and it was good, but it says in addition to timber production, we got to look at recreation and wildlife and so on. So it was pretty decent. And then I can't remember the acronym or the year exactly, but the Forest Service went NEPA, and they said, we've got to have people be able to comment on these things. Well, they didn't restrict it to the local people. They let somebody in Newark, New Jersey, that gives money to the Sierra Club to say, I want to save that spotted owl. My grandchildren will love me if I give you money to do that. And so they were able to get enough money to get an EAJA put through in the late 80s to say, oh, we don't need handouts. All we need is taxpayers. And we're fighting on the side of the ESA and so on. So what's happened is that original act is still the law. It's never been repealed. It doesn't apply particularly to the Elliott, but it should. And it does apply directly to the national forest, and it's been totally ignored. And people should be held accountable for not following that. It is to the advantage of the local people specifically, and to the American people generally, that we are supposed to be having these public forests.
That's what it kills me. You go back to this law, the Organic Act from 1897.
Yeah,
it's just like the Wagon Road Lands Act of 1937 or 1939. I can't remember which, but it was a congressional act. This is a congressional act, and nothing can override a congressional act except another congressional act. So no matter how many departments or bureaucracies and regulations they put in, it seems like the lawyers should be able to go back to the original act, the intent of what they were trying to do. And we've really have just screwed up the whole entire purpose of why humans exist. I mean, it's like they just don't. We are the evasive species. It just seems like is the only conclusion I've come to.
A healthy forest has a healthy human population. In the 1980s, we had Jerry Franklin and Norm Johnson convinced the people, the lawyers that make the votes, that a healthy forest has big dead trees and a bunch of dead trees on the ground because of the biodiversity. And so that's a sign of a healthy forest. That's like saying a sign of a healthy town is a bunch of dead and dying people. And that whole concept is what keeps us from salvaging the snags, because this is critical habitat for black-backed woodpecker. They actually argue that, and they get away with it. And we pay millions of dollars and lose billions of dollars worth of asset and kill thousands of people to smoke because black-backed woodpeckers like dead trees, and spotted owls, marbled murrelets, live in the ocean, mostly in Alaska, but sometimes they like to breed in a big tree, so we can't log anything. It's totally illogical, incredibly costly, really deadly, really stupid. And so hopefully with the new administration, that's changing, and the ruling by the Supreme Court, I think, is a real good step in that direction. This is just nuts.
I think between that and the ruling they had about a year ago on administrative judges and administrative laws, because people don't realize there's actual real judges, and then there are administrative judges who rule on the regulations that the bureaucracies create, and those are the worst ones. But they've been restricted as well. So I think with the legislation hopefully coming out of the feds and with the current administration, I'm really got my fingers crossed. I mean, it's like we kind of got a 4-year window. And the nice thing, Bob, is that there's a lot of kids, a lot of young kids who see a president that they idolize, they like, and they're going to be replacing us. This may be a really good thing. And, you know, it's so, I don't know. I hope we can keep him in there for 4 years and maybe get Vance in for another 8. And I think, boy, we'd have a generation or two that's kind of gotten right back on track again, you know?
That's the hope. And I think you're right. The current generation looks like they've had enough. They're not old enough to realize how good things were 40 years ago and 50 years ago. And they're realizing how bad things were in World War II, because we're dealing with war conflict now, and how bad that would be here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them don't realize that when World War II hit, people like my grandfather, my dad was in the war. My grandfather wanted to go in the war, but he was a logger, and he was more valuable logging because people need wood crates. They need white biplanes in World War I. Wood, they need housing. So having somebody manage the resources, a army travels on its stomach. Well, that stuff is filled by farmers. So farmers and loggers and those people are critical to our national defense. They used to know that, but and hopefully they're learning it again. It seems to be that maybe the things are turning finally.
My economics teacher taught us that there are only 4 base industries. You have agriculture, you have forestry, you have fishing, and you have mining.
Yep.
All other industry comes as a derivative from those industries. Even the oldest profession, the reason they're doing the oldest profession is to get something of value that came from agriculture, fishing, forestry, or mining. Whatever we pull out, whatever we create, you know what I mean? And you can go back as simple as reading, you know, Adam Smith, the Wealth of Nations and stuff, to realize these are the basic ingredients of any sound economy. And you take out a quarter, you know, either one of them, you're destroying your economy, because you're destroying all the other cottage industries that are created from those 4 base industries.
For a lot of years, and probably on your program in the past, I said that if the North Koreans or the Russians were trying to destroy our rural economies and destroy our forests, they couldn't do it any better job than the U.S. Forest Service has done in the last 20 years. Systematically burning them up, causing bankruptcies, shutting down industry, closing roads on purpose. Destroying roads. It doesn't make any sense what they're doing. We're destroying ourselves, and it doesn't make economic sense or biological sense. It just makes political advantage for one group of people that are pulling it off.
Now, see, if you were a government bureaucrat, you would have taken everything you just said, spin it on its head, and given yourself an award for, you know, that agency will give itself an award. What do you mean? We got people vacations because they don't have to work no more. You know what I mean? They would find some way to spin it and give themselves an award for doing it. And yeah, I've chewed them out. I've gone to, I forget which federal agency, and they were giving awards to their workers during the meeting where we were supposed to give public comment. And so when I got up to public comment, the first thing I said is, you know, these people make a lot of money, and they make a lot more money than me. And to force me to sit through listening to you give them more awards when I've already paid their salary is insulting. You know, it's just, this is nonsense. I'd rather Matt Holman, the guy that we had on the beginning, he deserves an award.
Yep.
So,
but Vicki Walker will get
one. What?
Vicki Walker will get one instead.
Yeah, Vicki Walker will get one said. So is there anything you want to tell us before we get you out of here?
No, buy my book and pay attention to the 1897 Organic Act, and stop the people that are killing the Elliott. Put people back to work for our Common School Fund again.
And definitely get your book. I want to show them all here again. The Elliott and Anthology. And then we have, you have a couple of them on here. You bring quite a few. Western Oregon Wildfires and Anthology. Ooh, now that's a really, you got a lot of good ratings on that one there. Let's see.
They
And
they
then,
just got finished in April. There's 4 of them now. That's
yeah,
me in 1981, planting a
nice.
tree in an old burn.
And an
That-
old burn. God,
I-
you've been doing this a long time, man.
Yeah, since 1966. But the anthologies, there's 4 of them. I just completed in the last 2 years, but it's a combination of my writings from 1980 to the last 2 are from 2025. So that's how recent these are.
Wow. Well, Dr. Bob, we'll get you back on here because you know this is going to continue. And I want to capture all of this as kind of a recorded history of, you know, where we started and where we're going to end up, because who knows? Who knows? So
That's the reason that I put those anthologies together, and the reason we keep talking. And you're right, the story's going to continue, and hopefully at some point it'll be a good news story.
yeah, I hope so too. Well, you
Yep.
take care. Okay, Bob.
Thank you.
All right. You take
Yep.
care. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Bob Zybach. I always enjoy having him on the show, and I always enjoy having you all on there. James, I appreciate you tuning in. Gary, thank you. Mom and Dad, yep, my mom and dad are watching. That means I've got 4 people who are now watching my show. See how that does? You get your mom and dad to watch your show, and you can actually double your audience. But no, we have a lot of good viewers out there, and I appreciate everything you're doing. And I do have to pay some bills here, and to do that, let's see. Yes, 3H Tree Service. We just talked to Matt Holman. He wasn't doing 3H Tree Service. I got to have lunch with him today, and we were talking all about some of the things that he's been doing for a while. You know, it was a windy weekend, and I was asking him if he had to go down 101 at some point to take out some trees, and it wasn't too bad. It wasn't really too bad. But 3H Tree Service, they can take care of all your tree needs. 541-294-1800. And when you do play 3H Tree Service, he's had winners before, giving away $50 to some people, lucky people out there who found them where's 3H Tree Service is at. And yeah, they can take care of all of those tree service needs. And they do the job. They clean up after themselves, and you won't even know they're there. All they do is they leave a nice view. That's the thing you're going to see. You're going to see a beautiful view because they took down some of those trees. But don't worry, they're trees. We can grow more of them on the side of the house, so your view's not impacted. And if they do get impacted, you can call 3H Tree Service and take care of the situation. Tom and Gigs, you can go over to Tom and Gigs if you have any of your car needs. You need some shocks, you need some struts, you need your tires aligned. Tom and Gigs is the place to go. They are great at taking care of all your automobile needs. If you need to go on a trip and you want to have your vehicle serviced, you want to have them check it out to make sure that it's able to travel, go to Tom and Gigs. Tim will have his guys check it out and make sure your car is safe and sound. And you can find him at 135 South Shoneman Street, behind the car wash in the Empire neighborhood. And if you know where the Empire neighborhood is, you obviously know where the car wash is. And Tom and Gigs, right behind them. And you can give them a call at 541-888-4660. Sometimes they're a little bit out on the time they can get to your cars. But usually it's not too bad. It's just a couple of days. And sometimes they can get you right in immediately. They're really great about that. Tom and Gigs, 541-888-4660. And also on Tom and Gigs, you got all these really cool remote control cars. You can get any style that they have down there. They got from the racing cars to the 4-wheel trucks. These are really cool RC cars. They're not like the RC cars we had as kids. Remember those RC cars we had as kids? Not quite the same animal. These things are really cool. They're really fast. They get up and go. They're the size of the old Tonka. Well, here, let me show you. Yeah, look at that. Look at the size of these things. These things are really cool. So if you got some kids at home who want to learn about how engines work, who want to learn, about these types of things, anything that's mechanical, anything that's electrical, it's good to learn. This guy right here is holding this car. He works at Tom and Gigs, and he can take care of all your needs, all your parts for these little cars. They're really great things. They're really kind of cool. There's one right there. I like that one. This is the one I like. Look at that. Look at all the accessories they have for those cars. So if you know, the largest dealer on the South Coast, look at that. You can get a nice 4-wheel drive truck. Yeah, there's one for $380. Yep. So Tom and Gigs for all of your RC needs. And I found out that we're not supposed to advertise explosives, so I can't show you. Well, I can show you these. They also have planes. They also have helicopters, but I can't show you that. So I can't. I just found out that that's wrong. But I'm also sponsored by Herbal Choices. They're a cannabis dispensary, Herbal Choices. You can find out more at the herbalchoices.com store. You must be 21 years or older to purchase anything at Herbal Choices. And I can't tell you. I just found out I can't even tell you what they sell at Herbal Choices. No, that would be wrong. But you know what they sell at Herbal Choices. And you have to be 21 or over. 21 or over to be doing that kind of stuff. Believe me, kids, you have to be 21 or over. They enforce those rules. The herbalchoicesstores.com, they got 5 of them. Their website, you can check out their times and locations, but they got one in Charleston, they got one in Coos Bay, one in Bandon, one in Reedsport, and one in North Bend. Really cool. This guy right here, not this guy, but this organization who's run by Kevin Starrett, Oregon Firearms Federation, he's going to be doing a lot of work here. He's got his work cut out for him because I believe they just passed a few of those gun bills. I'm going to have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure they just passed the one that restricts the how many rounds you can have in your magazine. It also puts a 72-hour waiting period on purchasing guns. I know people are going, well, what does that matter? You have to wait 6 months. Well, no, actually some people can go in, and if you have a concealed carry, usually you get approved right away. Well, you're not even going to get that. So having a concealed carry license, the CHL license, yeah, it's not going to even matter anymore at a certain point, because you're not even going to be able to take your guns to the city council meetings, the county commissioners meetings. They've limited the places where you can go with your CHL. It's a really bad law. It all violates the Constitution or the Second Amendment of the Constitution. And when it goes to court, the feds are going to find that it's unconstitutional, but they're going to need your help. This organization, Oregon Firearms, they're going to need your help to fight these laws until we can get them into the court. So if you can give anything to OregonFirearms.org, it would very much mean a lot to anyone who's a gun owner out there. If you appreciate your Second Amendment rights, Kevin Starrett has been fighting for your Second Amendment rights for over 30 years. He's been doing an incredible job. And hopefully, we'll take care of some of those gun laws. Hopefully the Supreme Court will rule on them before we have to spend any money fighting them. And that would be the best recourse, but I don't see it. I think we're going to have to fight for them. And Oregon Firearms Federation, I can guarantee you, will be on the front lines trying to defend our Second Amendment rights. They're not my sponsors, but I like to tell people about them. Bandon Gun Club. If you're in Bandon, you want to hone in your firearm skills, go to bandongunclub.org. That's bandongunclub.org, and find out more about how you can participate at their nice little group right there. And if they don't have a rifle range at Bandon Gun Club, but they do have a rifle range at Tioga Sports Park, and you can go to tiogasportspark.org to find out more about what's going on at Tioga Sports Park. And Coos County Neighborhood Watch, boy, this group, I'll tell you what. I'm not joking when I talk about how when I get up every morning, this is the first group I look at, because I know that there are criminals around Coos County who are committing crimes, and that the Coos County Neighborhood Watch people, they're out there at night. Sometimes I'm out there on patrol. I will go out there randomly on patrol, and I live in Bandon. So it's kind of like patrolling Mayberry RFD. I go from one red light to the other red light, back again, circle the area. I don't know. It takes me about 5 minutes. Then I do that for 20 minutes and get a couple of rounds in. And there's not a lot going on in Bandon, but luckily that's the way it should be. And part of the reason is because there are people like me out there making sure that people aren't up to shenanigans. They're not committing violent crimes against others, or they're not committing property crimes. And it's happening all the time. So, you know, those of you who live in Empire neighborhood, Coos County Neighborhood Watch would be a good thing to see, because they've always got the videos of the latest criminals committing crimes. And like I said, the first thing I do is check out Coos County Watch, because I know that whatever crime happened last night will be on this website before it's on the news. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. I mean, they knew about Northwest Fitness being raided before anyone was reporting it on the news. They knew about Wildlife Safari being raided way before anyone reported it on the news. So this is a really good group. And of course, Coos County Citizen Council. Coos County Citizen Council is a good group of people. You can check out Chris Castleman's podcast every Wednesday at 6 o'clock. I'm going to have to give Chris Castleman Bob Zybach's phone number because he might want to have Bob on there to talk about this because gosh knows we need to get the word out. And I want to add this to the stage again just to show you guys. Remember, I started the podcast with this poster right here. You take away logging, grazing, and maintenance, and you get fire bombs. This is common sense. This is historically, factually correct. This statement right here, and I want you to look past that statement, the wild fire that's burning on that hilltop right there. I mean, that's what we're going to get, folks, if we don't start doing something about this. If we don't make our legislators walk the right line, we're going to have problems with this. And thank goodness there's people like Dr. Bob Zybach out there who are they're putting the alarm out there, and they should, because the fires will burn at some point in time. Let's see, before I get out of here, it looks like I got a couple of comments. Let's see, Steve Nye says, keep putting your content out there. Interesting guest. The Elliott is mid-managed. Mismanaged, I bet he meant. I always do that too. Maybe it was spelled correct. I know you meant mismanaged, but it's mid-managed. I keep writing stuff, and I got that damn autocorrect. And for some reason, I don't know. I misspell more words now than I did before after having autocorrect because they recorrect the words that I really wanted to use. It's kind of annoying. But Steve, I know what you said. Oh, in fact, he corrects it. Says, I would like to edit mismanaged. Thank you, Steve, and thank you for joining. I truly appreciate it. And yeah, it's about that time again. So we will be on this Friday talking about, I don't know, we'll be ranting about something. So check in Friday night at 8 o'clock for the Friday night rant. Remember, we do a little drinking, we do a little cussing on Friday night. It's not like a Monday show that's PG. Our Monday shows are PG, but our Friday shows, hey, I don't know. It's a barn dance in here. I tell you, it's crazy. But definitely check out our Friday night rants. We have them at a irregular time. Sometimes I have them, sometimes I don't. So you have to check in. But I definitely will be back Monday. I've got a couple of different guests I may be having on Monday. I'm looking at getting someone in from NVBN, vote by mail. We're going to have someone in from that. I'm also looking at someone else coming in from election integrity. And I've been trying to get a couple of other people on here that I haven't had on in a while. I need to get Joel Skousen back on the show. That would be really good. I haven't seen Joel. And Trevor Loudon. Trevor Loudon, he wrote the book, Enemies Within. He wrote the really book talking about enemies within the U.S. legislature and then talking about enemies within the U.S. church. Very good stuff. Very compelling. And my mom and dad says, bye, Rob Taylor. Hi, Mom and Dad. I really enjoy when they tune into the show. See, that's why I don't cuss on Mondays. Mom's watching. Can't do that. All right, well, I'll see you folks Friday, and I'll definitely see you Monday if some reason I don't get back here on Friday. You don't always say, folks. Not always say. Carry on, Coos County. Carry on.